It is a great pleasure to me to introduce Wheeler, the next talk. Wheeler is an associate professor in the University of New Hampshire. He got his PhD at Harvard. Wheeler is really an incredible person, I think. Among the the big list of, credible list of achievement he got so far, there is one I do really appreciate. He led the group that used AI when he was working at Xerox for building the fastest printer. And you know, when you are organizing a conference and 24 hours before the conference you don't have yet all the printed materials, I mean, we should thank Wheeler if we have these nice booklets and this stuff. So Wheeler is going to give a talk, What Your Mama Didn't Tell You About Heuristic Search. I think you are right. My mom didn't tell me that much. So looking forward to fill up this. Yeah.
Thanks very much. So I'm Wheeler Ruml, and I'm going to talk today about heuristic search, which is sort of the dominant paradigm now for how intelligent systems decide what to do. And just to make sure we're all on the same page, I want to start off by just talking about planning as graph search, just for those in the audience may not be familiar. So we start with the initial state of the planning problem, right? So this is going to be represented as a node in this tree we're going to build. This start state up here at the top. And because there are lots of states in a planning domain often, we're going to generate this graph lazily on demand. There's going to be a process called expansion, where we take all of the applicable actions in this state and they become edges leading to the successor states here. So here we have the start state with two actions, A and B, leading to successors, and by repeatedly expanding nodes, we can generate this tree that represents possible paths through the state space, possible plans. And to represent the objective of the problem, there's going to be a goal test, a predicate that we can run on nodes. And you can see we've got these colored nodes here representing goals. And to represent what we're trying to optimize in the planning problem, we're going to assign costs to the edges. So every edge will be labeled by a number representing the cost of doing that action. And the goal of planning now is to search this tree to find the goals that have the cheapest costs. And we're going to call the cost of reaching a node its G value. So we start off at the root with a G value of 0, right, because it's free to be where you are. And then as we go down the tree, we accumulate cost, and this goal, for example, has a G value of 3 because it costs 3 to get there, whereas an alternative path may cost more. So this is the optimal goal for this problem. So now trees don't have to look like that. They can be beautiful, frilly objects. This is the search tree for a hovercraft planning problem. This is really, you know, my idea of a beautiful sliding tile puzzle, you might say. This block here sliding around with its little thrusters, and this is actually green line represents a possible plan to reach its goal configuration. So search trees are beautiful objects. Now, you've probably all heard of the Dijkstra algorithm, otherwise known as uniform cost search, sort of the simplest search algorithm you can imagine. If we were traveling from this start position here to this goal position here, as you know, Dijkstra expands nodes in order of their G value. So it's going to expand all the cheap nodes, all the nodes with cheap G values, before it expands any nodes with larger G values, and eventually it will reach the goal. But on the way to reaching the goal, Dijkstra will have to expand every single node whose G value is less than the cost of the optimal solution. And as AI people, right, this is just abhorrent that it would do this. You know, we just know that going down here is just not a useful place to be searching. So heuristic search adds in more information to the search algorithm here that's exploring the space of plans. The reason that it's absurd to go over here is because over here is further away from the goal. A node over here is going to be closer. So this is exactly the information that we give to the search algorithm. This heuristic function called h measures the distance to the goal. Now the true plan may be very complex and squiggly and avoiding all kinds of small obstacles. But the heuristic is just going to be a rough and ready approximation of what the distance to the goal is. So this straight line distance, for example, is a very intuitive kind of heuristic function. And this is going to allow the search to know that, look, a state over here is actually further from the goal than one that's over here. So oftentimes these heuristics are underestimates of the true cost, which I'm denoting by C star, the true cost of getting from some node n to the goal, and such heuristics are known as admissible. The A star algorithm is sort of the quintessential heuristic search algorithm. I think it's one of the most beautiful algorithms on all of computer science. Unlike Dijkstra, if we were to run A star from this start to this goal, it only expands nodes in this region here. Now, why is that region shaped like that? So this is because A star has to expand those nodes whose G values plus their H values are less than the cost of the optimal solution. All right, so a node over here where the G value is significant but the H value is also very large, those nodes now have values that are beyond the cost of the optimal solution. Their F cost, the sum of G plus H, is larger than the cost of the optimal solution. So the heuristic has pushed them outside the bounds of the nodes that we need to consider. Now, A star doesn't just have this wonderful effect in schematic cartoon drawings. It has this property in real, honest-to-God problems like, important things like pathfinding in video games. Here are the nodes expanded by a uniform cost search if we're trying to find a path from up here to down there. And the nodes that have been visited by the search are colored in according to what order they were expanded in the search. And you can see A star expands many fewer nodes. So about 1/3 as many. So the important points that I want to be making here are, first, that the heuristic is really serving the purpose of pushing nodes beyond the bound of the optimal solution cost. Right? The heuristic isn't really guiding the search. I'm amazed by how many people I see who are told by their teachers or their parents or whomever that heuristic search uses the heuristic to guide the search. Actually, the heuristic is allowing you to ignore nodes. It's allowing you basically to prune. So that's the first thing I want you to take away from this example. Now, the second thing is that optimal search is completely impractical. Because optimal search has to visit every single node whose G plus H is less than the cost of the optimal solution, we are doomed to visit an enormous number of nodes in many problems. Now, I am aware that there are certain people, both within our community and outside it, who are continually telling our young people that it's important to find optimal solutions. And I think, if you grow up hearing this, you may start to believe that shooting for optimality is really what we should all be striving for. But now, and especially because we are in Rome today, I would like to point out that we are all made of mortal flesh, and we do not have time to sit around and expand every single node that costs less than F star. We have to take this seriously. I don't think we can ignore our own human limitations and mortality, and I urge you to think more seriously about suboptimal search. And if you don't believe me, then I hope you all read Malte and Gabi's beautiful paper on How Good is Almost Perfect that was published at AAAI recently, where they showed that to find optimal solutions for a number of very popular benchmarks, an optimal search would be forced to expand an exponential number of nodes. For me, that's just a clear sign that optimality is an outmoded concept that it's time to leave behind. Now, I'm not trying to say that the recent work that we'll be hearing about in the next few days on finding symmetries and partial order reductions is not worthy, and it's certainly worth doing. But if one wanted to take a cynical view, one might say that techniques like that are really just trying to fix the modeling errors that some human made in trying to express the search space to the algorithm. Just cleaning up mistakes that the modeling language might have foisted on us. It's human nature for us to always try to solve problems that are larger than we could ever solve optimally. Everyone's ambitions always go beyond their grasp. So, my important point for this part of the talk is optimal search really is completely impractical. So my main message today is to exhort you all to work on suboptimal search and to introduce you to a new generation of problem settings that people have been working on recently in the search community, going beyond optimal search, which is really doomed with this necessity to expand everything less than F star. So there are a large number of possible problem settings that one could attack if one were to move beyond optimality. And I'm going to talk about these 4 today: greedy search, bounded suboptimal search, contract search, and utility-based search. So let's get started. So first setting I'll attack is a greedy search, where we want to find a solution as quickly as possible. Minimize solving time, with no regard for solution cost whatsoever. Okay, so how are we going to minimize solving time? Well, all the search algorithms I've ever met spend their time all day just expanding nodes, right? So if you want to minimize solving time, what you really want to be doing is minimizing the number of node expansions. So how are we going to minimize the number of node expansions? Well, one thing we could try to do is to go as quickly to a goal as possible. Just take the shortest path to a goal, right? Makes sense. Now, interestingly, this is not what most popular search algorithms do. Most popular search algorithms follow the heuristic, which, as we learned recently, is the cost to go. So if we're trying to get to the nearest goal, we should be trying to use an alternative information source, a new heuristic, which I call D. That's the distance to go in the search graph. How many edges do we have to traverse? Not the sum of their costs, but how many edges are there? And I put a little hat on D to represent the fact that it doesn't need to be admissible at all. It could be any kind of estimate. It could be an overestimate. It doesn't really matter for my purposes. So when you see a little hat in my talk, that means could be inadmissible. Here's just a simple example. If we have this node n that we've expanded, and we have 2 children here, and we're wondering where to go, one child has a cost to go of 4, but a distance to go of 2. The other child has a higher cost, but is estimated to have a closer goal. If we're trying to minimize solving time, we should go for this node here that has a goal that's closer. Okay? So this algorithm, because it's greedy on distance, I like to call it speedy search. So it's a best first search on this D hat or D distance to go estimate. Now, of course, the traditional approach to finding solutions as quickly as possible is greedy best first search, which is a best first search on H. H is often admissible. You know, I think people are brought up to believe that heuristics ought to be admissible, and they're taught techniques for deriving heuristics that are often admissible. But I want to point out, of course, H doesn't have to be admissible either. And if we allow ourselves to use inadmissible heuristics, we're opening ourselves up to a wider variety of choices. And we might be able to select a heuristic that offers better guidance to a search. So it's really, it's quite common, actually, I think, for people to see results like this. This is the first domain in Stuart Russell's AI textbook of a little vacuum robot that has to go around. In this particular domain, the vacuum gets tired as it vacuums up dirt because the dirt is heavy, so I call it heavy vacuums. And as we grow the size of the problem, the search time also grows, of course. this is greedy search, best first search on an admissible heuristic, and this is best first search on an inadmissible heuristic. And completely unexpectedly, completely as you would expect, the inadmissible heuristic is faster. But what I want to point out is when you search on distance to go, we're much faster still. Okay, so this is a greedy search on distance. The nearest goal is the one that's easiest to find. So that's the third part of my talk. The third point I want to make is that if you want speed in your search, you shouldn't be thinking about cost to go, you should be thinking about distance to go. So that's what is the ingredient that we want to add to our search if we want to make it fast. While we're at it, of course, I just want to point out the truism that, of course, inadmissible heuristics are possibly able to give us better guidance. There's no reason to limit ourselves to admissible heuristics, especially if we're trying to find a solution as quickly as possible. Okay, so that was a cute little trick, but are these things good for anything else? Well, let's look at the next problem setting that I want to address today. So this is searching under a deadline. It's also called contract search, where you give the search algorithm a certain amount of time, and you want to find the best solution you can within that time. So we're minimizing costs subject to an absolute time bound. Okay, so the traditional technique for this is an anytime algorithm. So many people use anytime algorithms, which return a series of solutions, eventually converging on optimal. But anytime algorithms are really best thought of as algorithms for when you have an unknown deadline. Right? I've never actually seen an anytime algorithm that pays any attention to when it might be terminated. They're all operating under the assumption that God will come down at some point and strike them from the earth, but at a time that is completely unknown. So they waste time finding. I remember the first time I ever ran an anytime algorithm, it found 10,000 solutions before it was terminated. And that means that it wasted time finding 9,999 of those solutions. So surely we can do better than that. Well, what if we just do the simplest thing you could possibly think of, right? What if we just say, well, while we still have time, I'm going to expand the best node I could find that looks like the solution is reachable within the time limit. Very simple approach. I'm not claiming this is rocket science. Of course, for best here, I'm going to use some inadmissible estimate because we don't need admissibility. So I'm going to use the most informed notion that I can, the most informed heuristic. And for reachable, we mean reachable within the search time that we have. And gee, maybe this distance thing we were just talking about, maybe we could use that to somehow estimate time to go. Let's try it out. How's that going to work? So how long is it going to take us to reach a goal that's d hat steps away? Well, how long is it going to take us to go one step, right? And we can multiply that by d. How long does it take to take one step towards a goal? Well, that is just the time between when we generate the next node along a path to when we actually get around to expanding that node and advancing one step along the path. So this is a measure of how much the search is vacillating between expanding different parts of its frontier. I call this quantity expansion delay. And so now, if we want to do contract search, we just take the remaining time and we divide it by our current estimate of the expansion delay. And this is a very rough approximation to how far we expect the search to get, right? Nothing fancy, just very basic. So now we have an algorithm just like A*, except we're going to prune on what we think the most distant solution we can reach is going to be. So while we still have time, we estimate our bound, take the best node off of open. If it's a goal, fantastic. If it's not a goal, we check and make sure, gee, is the solution under that node reachable within the time? Oh, it is? Terrific. Let's expand. If not, we stash it away. This is a very simple algorithm. It, occasionally completely prunes its entire open list, so we have this little recovery where we take the prune nodes and put them back if there's no time. This very simple algorithm actually performs really well. So this is the x-axis here. These are different deadlines going from all the way from a small fraction of a second out to 30 seconds. These are the canonical sliding tile puzzle that we all know. Most of these lines here are various anytime algorithms. The x-axis here is the IPC metric for solution quality. And so up is good, and this red line here is a deadline-aware search that we're just looking at. You can see that for the majority of the deadlines, it completely dominates the anytime algorithms. And this is not specific to the sliding tile puzzle. This happens in, this is a robot motion planning example here with a lattice-based search. And you can see that it's also beating the heck out of the anytime algorithms. And you know what I like about this deadline-aware search, besides the fact it's so simple? It has no parameters. Okay, if you look at like ARA star, for example, it has a lot of parameters you have to set, and that's a pain in the neck. So the fifth point in my talk is maybe this expansion delay thing is a useful idea. It helps us relate distance to time, and if you want to find a solution quickly, of course you care about time. And then the next point, just trying to find the one solution you want, maybe that's better than just finding zillions of solutions and spraying them all out to the user and hoping for the best. Okay, maybe we should actually be looking for the solution we want. Okay, now I've talked about a couple of algorithms, and I would not be surprised if there are those in the audience who maybe grew up, you know, in a very uptight household, maybe they were beaten as kids or something, and you know, somehow they are uneasy by the algorithms I've shown because there are absolutely no performance bounds of any useful kind that I can prove about those algorithms at the moment. So next we're going to look at a setting where we have actual performance bounds. This is bounded suboptimality, and in this setting, we're supposed to minimize solving time subject to the constraint that the solution I return to you is going to have a cost within a factor W of the optimal solution. Okay, so we're going to have our suboptimality of our solution is going to be bounded. It's going to be W suboptimal. Okay, so I'll talk about the explicit estimation search algorithm, EES, which is, again, very simple, like the first thing you might think of. We're going to try and expand the node that is the nearest goal that has a solution that is going to satisfy our quality bound. Okay, that's the idea. The nearest goal, because we've seen that that's the fastest thing to do, right? So we're going to expand the nearest, go to the nearest goal that lies within the suboptimality bound. Okay, now the traditional algorithm for bounded suboptimal search is weighted A star, but I want to point out weighted A star, right, is weighting the heuristic. It's a best first search on G plus W times H. This is going to converge to a greedy search, right? And we've already seen greedy search on H is not the right thing to do if you're trying to minimize time. So what we want is an algorithm that will converge to speedy search, right? We want nearest in the sense of distance, not cost. Okay, this is the key idea. And of course, for this estimated to lie within the bound thing, I'm going to use my inadmissible heuristic again. I'm going to add it to G. I'm going to call it F hat. So we have G plus H hat equals F hat. So I'm going to go to the nearest goal whose estimated cost I think is going to lie within the suboptimality bound. That's going to be the algorithm. So there's this node on open, right? If we look at the estimated cost of all the nodes on the open list, there's going to be one that has the lowest estimated cost. That's my best estimate for the optimal solution cost, right? This is my most informed heuristic I'm using. It's not constrained to be admissible. I'm just trying to be accurate here. And now this is the node I want to expand. I'm calling it best D hat. We look over all the nodes in open whose estimated cost, F hat, is less than or equal to W times the estimated optimal solution cost, right? This node up here, the lowest F hat on open, right? Among all those nodes, we go and look, and we take the one with minimum D hat. All right? This is the node whose goal is estimated to be the closest among all those nodes whose goals are estimated to be within the solution bound. Okay? So that's the EES search strategy. And you may be wondering, okay, what about the bound? How do we ensure suboptimality? But of course, we can have some admissible heuristic as well, and we can look at the admissible F value of all the nodes in the frontier and use that to ensure solution quality. I'm not going to go into the details here. You can check out the paper or talk to me, but we use that to enforce the bound. But the basic search strategy is based on D and F hat. Okay, so how does this work? In practice, well, it actually works really well. This is the running example domain in Malik and Dana and Paulo's fantastic textbook. the dockyard robots. Here we have CPU time. Here we have the suboptimality bound. So the name of the game is, for a particular suboptimality bound, how fast can you be? There are a couple of different flavors of EES that I haven't really spelled out for you, but there are these Italian colored lines here, green and red, and you can see that compared to weighted A star, they're actually about 30 times faster. These other lines here are other algorithms developed in my group, which we were able to surpass now. Now, this doesn't just happen in this domain. Here's actually a unit cost domain where distance and cost are the same. So we're still getting a superior performance even in a domain like this. And if I take this same domain and I add in costs so that it's not all actions cost the same anymore, you can see a dramatic difference. And these algorithms up here are converging to the performance of greedy search on H, and these algorithms down here are converging to speedy search, right, much faster. So that's explicit estimation search. And in addition to reinforcing the points that I made earlier about distance and inadmissibility being really important, I think this also exemplifies a seventh point, which is really you should be trying to optimize your true objective. If you want to find the solution as quickly as possible within a bound, that's the node you should expand. Okay, so speaking of this, optimizing your true objective, a lot of people don't have suboptimality bounds in mind. Some people are more flexible. Instead of saying, I must have something within 10% of optimal, they're willing to trade a little bit. Okay, I'm going to trade off solving time and solution cost, right? I'm willing to spend a little more time if I find a much better solution. Okay, they have a utility function in mind. So that's what we're going to look at next, searching according to a utility function. This will be my last major section of the talk. Okay, we're trying to balance time and cost according to the user's utility function. And it's surprising to me how few algorithms there are that have been proposed where people actually tell the search algorithm what they want, where they give the utility function to the algorithm. In this work, we just considered linear utility functions. So for a solution of cost f that's found at time t, the utility is going to be some linear combination of the cost and the time. The user is going to give us their weighting between cost and time. And more cost and more time are both bad things, so I have this negative sign in front there. So that's the utility function. Now, one neat thing, even within this very restricted class of utility functions, one really neat thing that I love about this is you can express the idea of minimizing goal achievement time, right? I want to get to the goal as soon as possible, right? That's what your user wants. Your user doesn't necessarily care if your plan is optimal or your algorithm is as fast as possible. They just want to achieve their goal, right? Why aren't we addressing our customers' needs, right? We should be fired for not doing this earlier. If the cost of a plan is the make span of the plan, its duration, and we add that to the solving time, this is how long from now the goal will be achieved. That is the time we should be minimizing, right? So this is a neat special case of this general linear utility function. So let's make an algorithm that optimizes this. So traditionally, people use anytime algorithms for this kind of thing. But I want to point out that anytime algorithms will run until they find an optimal solution, right? If you're going to use an anytime algorithm in practice, you're going to have to stop it at some point, right? Some point that optimizes your utility function. Now, there's been beautiful work on theoretically how do you combine anytime algorithms and when do you terminate them and all this thing. But these termination policies all require copious amounts of training data, which can be a pain in the neck to gather. And you are making the assumption that your training data is somehow representative of your problem. And of course, there's this problem I talked about before with anytime algorithms where they may waste a lot of time finding 9,999 solutions that you just throw away until you find the one that you really want. So can we do better than anytime algorithms? Well, let's try searching according to the utility function. You know, it's not rocket science here. We're just going to search according to this quantity u, and we're going to apply the weight to the cost, and we're going to apply the weight to our estimate of the solving time. So this is the distance to go to a goal plus our expansion delay, how long it takes us to go per step, times the time per expansion. Right? So this is what the time we expect it to take. Now these are just estimates. All we have to do is be better than anytime search here. But I want to point out this algorithm, first of all, it has no parameters whatsoever except the actual utility function of the user. There's no need to try and train a termination policy, and it spends all its effort pursuing a single solution. So how well does it work in practice? Well, again, I'm a search person, so I have to show you the sliding tile puzzle. Here on the y-axis, we have the utility achieved by the search. So this is the sum of planning time and solving time weighted according to the user's utility function. And along the x-axis here, we have various utility functions. Over here, cost is the only thing that matters. So A star is able to achieve very good utility. This here is how much worse your utility was as a factor of the best achieved utility. So you can see A star does very well, but for utility functions over here, where we really care about solving time, A star performs much worse, and speedy search does much better. But along the bottom, all the way across, is our Bugsy algorithm, best first utility guided search, yes. It does very well all along. And of course, it's not just on the 15 puzzle. Here's a grid pathfinding problem. And you see A star performing even worse, going right off the top of the screen here. And I should point out that this line marked A or A star, this is an anytime algorithm using a trained termination policy. Okay, so we gave it tons and tons of examples from this domain and used Shlomo's beautiful termination policy construction algorithm to find the optimal termination policy. And Bugsy has no training data whatsoever, and it's very competitive. So the favorite domain that my grad students love to run this algorithm on is a video game that they built in their spare time. It's a platformer-style video game. And Bugsy actually did really well in this domain. It's the best all the way across. Again, we have the trade-off between A star and speedy. What I want to do is show you a quick video just to drive home the point of how this algorithm behaves. You're going to see the three algorithms lined up, A star, Bugsy, and speedy. And Speedy will begin executing right away because it finds a plan right off the bat. Bugsy takes a fraction of a second longer to plan and then starts executing, and A star sits around for quite a while trying to decide what to do. So let's try this out here. Okay, so you can see Speedy and Bugsy are immediately starting to execute their plans, which they found very quickly. The plan that Speedy found is really a very poor plan, so the agent just sits around doing extraneous actions quite a bit. Bugsy has already reached the goal. Okay, and now A star finally starts moving. Right, it's found the optimal plan, but of course it's not meeting its user's utility function at all. Right, it's going to reach the goal far after Bugsy has already been there. Speedy takes another 2 minutes to reach the goal with that plan that it found right away. So that's just an example to viscerally show you how important it can be to optimize the true objective. The additional point that I want to make in this part of the talk before I wrap up is that I'm a big believer in trying to put reasoning into search, and a lot of the previous work on meta-reasoning has been in the context of these termination policies, where you sit outside the search algorithm and look in at the solutions that are coming out, and you try and guess when you're supposed to terminate the algorithm. Why guess? The search algorithm sees the entire open list. The search algorithm knows what other plans are available. That's the place where we ought to be reasoning about whether more search is worthwhile or not. Inside the algorithm itself, it shouldn't be a wrapper. So put the meta-reasoning inside the search, I say. Okay, just to recap the points that I've made so far in the talk, the first is just this observation that heuristics and heuristic search traditionally for optimal search have not really been to guide the search, but just to prune. As we move towards considering suboptimal search, the question of constructing heuristics that really guide the search is extremely important. Optimal search is, I think, for many domains completely impractical, and it's really time to start taking suboptimal search seriously. Distance to go is a fantastic information source because it really correlates well with the speed of the search, and if that's what you want to optimize, that's the information that you need. Inadmissible heuristics are not something we should be scared of. We should embrace them. Expansion delay might be a useful concept. I don't know. It seems useful so far. Finding one solution rather than finding many and hoping you found a good one seems to be a good approach so far. And I think maybe most obviously, but often forgotten, is this idea of optimizing the true objective. Right? You should get what your users want and try and optimize that. And if that means exposing more information to the search algorithm, like the user's utility, all the better. And finally, put the meta-reasoning inside the search. I think we can use some smarter search algorithms. And I showed you 4 algorithms that sort of exemplify these points that I've made. I just want to mention one more thing about EES. I showed it to you for bounded suboptimal search, but there have also been modifications for other suboptimal settings like bounded cost search and anytime search, I have to admit. Okay, so to wrap up here, it's time to take suboptimal search seriously. And there are a number of really interesting research questions that I think are brought up that I hope everyone else who's smarter than I am will start attacking, like what sort of design principles can we have, and what sort of guarantees are we going to be able to provide about the behavior of suboptimal algorithms? What sources of information should we use? How do we properly design inadmissible heuristics? There's been a lot of work on designing optimal heuristics. What about inadmissible ones? Is there something beyond cost to go and distance to go that we can use? Is there a way of incorporating this popular notion from planning about helpful actions? What's the proper role of abstraction and hierarchy in suboptimal search? These are fascinating questions that are receiving attention now in the community. How to combine and best exploit the information that the search algorithm has. What kind of meta-reasoning should we be doing? These are all fascinating questions. And you know, if we think about the AI vision, right, of an agent interacting with an environment, using, of course, a heuristic search-based planner to select its actions, and then sensing and updating its world model, if we think about this agent that we want to build, this is really entirely analogous to a search algorithm, right? The search algorithm itself is taking actions like expanding nodes in the domain. The search algorithm is discovering new things that it didn't know before. Oh, I have 6 children over here. These are their F values. These are their G values. The search algorithm is maybe thinking a little bit about what actions it should take next. Which nodes should I expand? The search algorithm is an agent. Right? So if we think about what is heuristic search, I submit to you today that heuristic search is really acting under uncertainty to minimize utility. In fact, if we think about it, heuristic search is really in microcosm all of AI. In fact, heuristic search is really in microcosm all of life. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Wheeler.